Fingerprinting. No two people share the same fingerprint pattern. Fingerprints are a crucial piece of evidence in a crime scene. Fingerprinting is useful in identifying a suspect when looking at DNA left at a crime scene. Technique uses. The main uses for fingerprinting in a crime scene are linking suspects to a crime and identifying victims. Fingerprinting can also be used for medical applications, paternity testing, and genetics and genealogy. The historical background of fingerprinting. Beginning in the 1870s, fingerprinting began being studied and a classification system was developed. By 1880, police were beginning to use fingerprints for identification. In 1902, the Paris police identified a fingerprint at a crime scene and were able to compare it to their records and find the murderer. In 1911, fingerprints were first accepted by the U.S. courts as a reliable means of identification. In the early 20th century, fingerprints became widely used in criminal cases. In the 1960s, fingerprint identification began on computers. In the 60s and 70s, automated fingerprint systems were created by the FBI. Advancements in fingerprinting. In the 1900s, they used techniques like dusting to find prints that aren't visible to the eye, iodine fuming to develop latent prints, lifting with clear adhesive tape, and fingerprint powder or chemical developers like ninhydrin. Fingerprints were stored in manual filing systems and were organized by their characteristics. This was done so that they could compare prints easier. Today's techniques. Dusting with black powder for non-porous surfaces, using chemical developers for porous surfaces, clear tape to lift the print after it's visible, and specialized equipment like forenscopes that use different lights and filters to reveal fingerprints. Fingerprints are now stored digitally on computers. They use systems like the Automated Fingerprint Identification System to compare fingerprints found at crime scenes with fingerprints stored on the database. Case study. The Stratton brothers. In March of 1905, Thomas Farrow was found dead and his wife was found unconscious in their paint shop. William Jones visited the shop in the morning and it had not been opened like it should have been. He noticed numerous chairs knocked over and when he looked through the window, Jones approached a nearby resident and the two of them forced their way into the shop where they found Mr. and Mrs. Farrow. The police were called and Miss Farrow was rushed to the hospital where she later died. The police investigated and found no signs of forced entry. They found two black masks and they found an empty cash box. The cash box was further examined and they found a greasy fingerprint on the inside. The police turned the fingerprint over to the fingerprinting bureau and they ran it through the system and found no matches. Police began interviewing possible witnesses. Numerous people stated that they had seen two men coming out of the shop, and one witness even identified one of them as Alfred Stratton. Alfred and his brother Albert didn't have a criminal record, but they did have ties with criminal circles. Alfred's girlfriend told police that Alfred had gotten rid of the clothes that he had worn that day, and he returned home with unexplained money. The brothers were arrested and fingerprints were taken, and it was a clear match to Alfred's. This was one of the first instances where fingerprints were used as evidence to solve a crime. In the case of Thomas Jennings, the murder of Clarence Hiller was the first U.S. case solved by fingerprint evidence. Thomas Jennings had just recently been released from jail, and he was sneaking through a neighborhood, breaking into homes and sexually assaulting women. He broke into Clarence Hiller's home and went into his 15-year-old daughter's room where Clarence confronted Jennings. Jennings then shot and killed Clarence Hiller. Little did Jennings know, but the Hillers had a freshly painted porch where he left 4 fingerprints. At the trial, witnesses identified him as the murderer, and police removed the handrail from Hiller's home. They then took photographs of the fingerprints, blew them up, and compared them with the fingerprints from his prison record. The fingerprints were an exact match. The court found Jennings guilty, and he was sentenced to death. The correct procedure for evidence collection and techniques. One of the most common techniques is lifting the prints. Dusting the surface with fingerprint powder, and then if you find a fingerprint, photograph it first. Lift the print with clear adhesive tape and stick it to a card to preserve the print. Another method for finding fingerprints is to use an alternative light source. To prepare the surface, superglue fuming you can use for non-porous surfaces, or chemical developer for porous surfaces need to be used first. Then choose the proper alternative light source. Next, scan the area for fingerprints. And then you can use fluorescent powders or dyes if needed to enhance the prints, and then scan the area with the light source again and photograph any prints that are found.